Hello guys, welcome to today's podcast. It has been a while, to say the least. I think this is episode 32 or 33. I've taken a break. It's now the 28th of December, and you may be wondering, why the hell am I doing one now? Well, you guys have been asking me more than I expected, when is the podcast coming back? And I'm going to be completely honest, a similar thing to the newsletter situation happened, that I wasn't receiving that much gratification, kind of felt like it wasn't going anywhere, and then once you stop, then everyone starts saying how good it is. So the lesson here is, for me, to not rely on external gratification to do things, and a lesson for you listeners to tell me when you're enjoying something. A like, a comment, a share, it goes a long way to growing whatever the project is, whether it be, I don't know, the YouTube thing, podcast thing, newsletter thing. And yeah, for me, just to keep going, because yeah, you should do it for yourself. I guess sometimes you lose perspective of why you do things. And the reason I did the podcast was to grow my audience and get more people to say SYNTHO. And it definitely worked. Someone has just messaged me before recording this, 5 minutes before, saying they discovered me through the podcast. So if you discovered me through the podcast, I would love to know. So comment below. Today is a bit of a review of the year. I'm going to be very transparent about some of the feelings I've had about different projects, what I'm thinking for next year, and just some general chit-chat. It's mostly going to be talking about myself. I'm kind of doing this for myself to get things out of my head into the space of the internet. You guys then know what I'm about for next year and what I'm thinking for this year. And also it might give myself some clarity. So yeah, just a heads up. So don't be commenting saying, all's going to speak about myself for an hour, because that's all I'm going to do. So let's get stuck into it. Actually, before we begin, let me remind you that the reason we started this is because I run a teaching platform called SYNTHO. If you want to take your music to the next level, the link will be attached to this video. It covers everything you'll need to make slammers. And if you've not started making music yet, I also have a beginner's course. And yeah, that is very, very good. I've had hundreds of people do that this year, and people have said it changed their life because they thought it was a very daunting task to make music, and I've made it very simple. So I take great pride in the quality of that course, and you won't regret it. I'll give you money back if you don't enjoy it. So let's get stuck into it. I've got myself a glass of water, if you watch on YouTube, and I've also got myself a Moretti. And you may be wondering, if you're watching this in real time, why I've not been out and about over Christmas. I got the fucking coronavirus for the second time. We're not going to talk about that, but tomorrow I'm back out in the mixer again. So fortunately, I had a gig on Boxing Day in Hull, but it got postponed. And I was meant to play again on New Year's Eve and got postponed, but I could have played that one. I also was meant to go to Barcelona yesterday and play there, but the gig didn't materialise in the end. But that would have been 3 gigs gone because of the old corona if they'd gone ahead, but they got cancelled. So kind of worked out well because I'd have been seriously gutted. So the first thing we are going to talk about is the podcast. When it started, well, I'm going to go back to January this year when we had Ollie Ryder to begin with. I'm not going to throw all the podcasts. I'm just going to kind of do a bit of a whistle-stop tour of my thoughts. Honestly, there was lockdown, I had a lot of time, and we couldn't see anyone, could we? So it was a great way to speak to other people. Obviously, like I say, promote my brand, but also have great conversations with people. And I think you lot seem to really enjoy it. And I think the most listened to podcast is the Rossi one. I think we've got about, before I say, how many downloads do you think we get? Well, I get. How many people do you think downloaded that podcast? Just have a guess in your head. This is the all-time most downloaded podcast, and I'm only on about downloads here, so that means Spotify or Apple. That's on about 950 now, and it's had 4,000 YouTube plays. So that's nearly 5,000 plays on a podcast. That's pretty impressive, I think. But at the time of stopping the podcast, it wasn't really growing in numbers for some reason, and I felt it was very heavily dependent on the guest I had on, which isn't really what I want the podcast to be about. I want people to trust me and I know the conversation's going to be entertaining / interesting / insightful every time. So I kind of lost motivation there because I thought I can't just keep chasing new guests every week, and that's what it was kind of turning into. And I'm going to talk about the drawbacks in a sec. I've not planned this at all. This is completely off the cuff, so it might be a bit to and fro in places. But yeah, chasing big names every week, I knew would be hard. And the whole club started again. So I was like, do you know what? One, find the time where you both can do it, and also be in the right headspace. As I wanted the conversations to be interesting, thought-provoking, me to kind of leave the conversation feeling inspired as well. And this just means there's a lot of dynamics. I think every podcast was really, really great. I know there's some conversations still to be continued of some of the guests because they were really good. But there's a lot of cogs to it, really. And my new strategy is going to be to batch them. So my plan for next year is to record 3 in one day, like maybe every other Thursday, record 3 and really get ahead of it. So I block days for the podcast. So it almost becomes a factory and you just churn them out. There'll still be great conversations, but I think that's a more sustainable way to do it than do them every week, because then you're relying on schedules and all that jazz, and it takes a lot out your day, the conversation, and I think just doing it all in one day would be good. So the editing as well, it's another thing to bear in mind. In the end, I outsourced the editing to a few people I went through, as they either couldn't commit the time to it in the end, or they didn't want to carry on with it, because it is quite a tedious job. You've got to watch the whole thing back, color grade it, make any appropriate cuts, and then create all the clips for social media. So that was outsourced. The reason I outsourced that was because my time is finite, and as Naval Ravikant says, the entrepreneur says you should set a price on your daily hour. I'm not going to say what I set mine at, but it's probably quite high in the grand scheme of things. And if you can find someone to do whatever job it is for cheaper than your said rate, you should outsource that job, and outsource relentlessly, he says. And this is a great way to grow any business / empire / whatever. So I'm a big believer in outsourcing, and 2022 is going to be a year where I really want to have all the cogs moving, no matter if I'm asleep or awake, and build a real good team around everything I do. And it's just a great way to grow things, because then you can focus on what you can add value in doing. So that would be for me planning what I'm going to say in the podcast, or making new YouTube videos, or recording more podcasts and things like that. For the whatever 6, 7, 8 hours it takes to edit a podcast, I could then record like 3. So that's how my brain works, and I think it's a very good way to think. And he's quite savage with it, Naval. He says, like, if he buys a piece of clothing from the shop and he's to return it, if that amount is less than his said hourly rate, he won't return it. And he says that he should use that time instead to work and make the money back, opposed to sending it back. Because in theory, if you work for an hour and you can make more money than you'd spend taking the clothes back, you'd actually be in a net positive situation. But obviously, we don't all work every hour of the day, so there is time to take your clothes back. So the podcast, now I know it's an essential part to growing this whole ecosystem of Josh Baker, SYNTHO, Hide&Seek, You&Me, whatever it may be, because I know people have discovered me through it. I look around at a lot of well-established, famous, whatevers you want to call them, your Tim Ferrisses, your Joe Rogans, your James Smith, whether it be like so many different levels to it. I feel like everyone's got a podcast now, like the Jake Humphrey one's come out this year. I think it's a really great thing to have in the long run, to grow an audience, to talk to an audience, and have people on and have extended conversations about things you care about. It's a very special format. And now I think about it, my quality of conversations has definitely decreased since stopping the podcast, because I don't think I've sat with anyone for an hour uninterrupted since the last few podcasts. Like, it doesn't happen. The phone's out. Someone goes for a cig, whatever. It's never uninterrupted. So I think the quality of conversation adds a lot to my life and gives me a lot of introspection as well as learning things from other people. So it's going to come back. On what frequency? I think it has to be every week. I would love to know what you guys think. If there's anything you think about it that could help make it more efficient, but I don't want it to just be DJs, by the way. I think everyone I've had on has been amazing, but trying to chase bigger DJs each time, it's just it's almost like it's not going to work. And for me personally, I don't want to be chasing. A few people said no to me, actually. Some people I was a bit like, come on, I get you don't want to come on a podcast, but the way they said no was can you speak to my manager and things like that, and kind of dodging it. I'd rather someone who says no, I'm not really up for this, I don't feel comfortable doing it, opposed to kind of you need to speak to a manager and then it being this kind of decision, because I get it, but I don't want to be chasing after people when it's hard work enough as it is. I get some people play hard to get, but there is a line, I think, and a few times it was a bit like, come on. So I think in terms of that, I want to go for different kind of fitness, business, all that kind of stuff, as that's things that interest me. Maybe get some other podcasters on my podcast and interview them. And we're going for a Moretti today, an ice cold one. I thought it'd be a nice beverage for this podcast if you're listening. And I take a slight break and a slurp. It's my ice cold Moretti. So in terms of DJs, I will be getting DJs on, but I want to try and mix up with other people, and that'll keep me interested and hopefully make you guys become interested in topics you didn't already think of, because I've listened to every day at least one episode of something, and the amount of people I've discovered, books I've read from podcasts is insane. So it'd be great, even authors, to get them on here. And another word that really triggered me, I don't think triggered is the word, but when people were saying, oh, you were good at interviewing, I never really thought myself as an interviewer. And I didn't really like the idea of being an interviewer. I thought, nah, that's not me, I'm not an interviewer. But then I've kind of realized that the word interviewer is not really a bad thing. I almost kind of felt like it was making me quite passive in this whole situation, and it was kind of growing other people and not me. And now I've realized like it was my whole audience that was growing. But the word interviewer, I kind of associate this with these talk shows that someone comes on. It's all about the guest. Whereas, like I said, I want it to be more about the conversation, no matter who it's with. So yeah, the word interviewer has taken me a while to get my head around that I'm an interviewer. Good one, bad one, I'm not too sure. Apparently I'm all right. But that's taken me a while to get my head around. So that was another string to it. So leading on from the podcast, if you've got any feedback, please comment below what you think and what your highlight of the podcast has been this year, as it'd be cool to know. And if you're doing it on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe is always the best way to help it. And then on iTunes, I think you can rate the actual podcast 5 stars. So yeah, I appreciate all the support on it and all the kind messages since I stopped, because it has inspired me. It's just been a matter of when I want to do it, and this seemed a fitting time and a great way to get a cheeky episode in before the end, hey? So the newsletter, I'm going to touch on that quickly. At the start of 2021, I launched my newsletter called Fast Track Thoughts. It got a lot of good feedback, but again, I stopped because I didn't really feel like it was actually adding that much value, and it was becoming hard work. And here's one thing I want to say. I'm giving this advice out because it's something I'm telling myself this. The minute you start using the perspective of work instead of play, this is when it all goes downhill. Using the word you get to instead of you have to. So I got to do the podcast. Sorry. I had doing the podcast was an opportunity. It wasn't work. But the minute I started reframing it as I've got to do this podcast instead of I get to do the podcast. So sorry, whatever I just said previously probably didn't make sense. Changing get from got. So if you say I've got to go to the gym, instead of if you say to yourself I get to go to the gym, this whole mindset shift can sound a bit corny, but it really makes things a lot better. So the newsletter, I started thinking I've got to write the newsletter instead of, I get to write the newsletter. And it was fun. I was like reading in the week. I was reading other newsletters, books, listening to podcasts. I had a lot of information I wanted to share that not necessarily would fit in a podcast, quotes, things like that. And I did about 10 weeks, and I was enjoying it. And then eventually I was like, oh, fuck this. It's too much effort, and sacked it off. It was an all or nothing again. Mirror thing of the podcast, stopped completely, done for. And again, it was a good way to grow my audience. People enjoyed it. And when I stopped, everyone said, why did you stop? But anyway, that's going to come back, but in a simpler form. I did it I tried to make it quite quirky and quite cool last year, and had these different sections, but it actually made it hard work. I'm just going to do a newsletter every Friday. Subscribe to it by the link in my website, and you'll get an insightful email every week. And if one week I've got not much to say, I'll just give you an album to listen to. But it comes back to the consistency thing, I think, that if you don't have a newsletter, then you've not got any at all. I know it sounds obvious, but it's better to send the odd email than no emails. And having an email list is a very powerful tool for marketing and things like that. And I'll be talking a lot about email marketing in my upcoming course called Amplify Your Audience, which is a course all about how to market yourself online with integrity. I'll be talking about all the things in this podcast, as in how to build a podcast, record a mix, market on Instagram, things like that. And if you want more information, there is a video on Instagram which I'll attach below. But yeah, if you're a DJ or anything like that and you want to market yourself more and you're not sure where to start, I've got a course on it. But anyway, back to business. The newsletter, yeah, it will be back, as it coincides great with the podcast, I think, as it means I can contact you guys on a weekly basis and share with you things I've learned. And I think it's cool. I think next year I'll be traveling more, so I'll have more tales to tell. And I want to make it fun. I tried to make it a bit too clever and a bit too smart to begin with, well, start this year. But I'll be back with something a bit more casual and nicer. So if you're not already subscribed to my mailing list, you'll be able to find a link on synthohub.com. I think there is a tab that says, I can't remember what it's called now. Newsletter, I think. But just join that. You won't regret it. You can always unsubscribe, but I won't peck your ad once a week, and maybe the odd sales promotion as well. So next up, I'm going to talk about SYNTHO, the granddad of all this, the reason I started the podcast and all that jazz, that really got me into learning more about marketing, growing an audience, all that jazz. And SYNTHO has gone really, really well this year. Better than I expected. I've helped hundreds of people take their meets to the next level, some for a month, some for 2 months, some for 18 months. The length of people's journeys inside the platform varies completely, but the people I've met, it's been so great to meet so many great people, and then finally put some names to faces because the rave started again. But yeah, we've banged out 2 videos a week all year, all fucking year, me and the team. So I've got to give myself a pat on the back. Sometimes I don't give myself enough credit for the platform. I don't think it's quite intense, the whole nature of the business model and the way you're helping people, and you're very open to messages, open to, it's what you ask for really, creating a teaching platform, but it's quite non-stop. Every day there'll be something to deal with, of a message, an email. There's always the odd twat, obviously, but 99% of people are super cool and always super grateful for everything, and it's very heartwarming actually. I think there is one thing in getting booked for gigs and stuff, but knowing you're actually helping people is really good, and offering something that I didn't have myself. So I can very much relate to everyone who is on this journey of DJ and all that jazz. I know exactly what it feels like to kind of not know the next step, and to know I'm offering that exact thing is good. So yeah, SYNTHO has been a great success. I have had a few people work for me on the admin side of things, with the social media, things like that. And I will be taking on a full-time employee next year, which is very exciting, as we continue to grow the YouTube, the podcast, the SYNTHO, more video content from myself, So there's obviously going to be more editing, things like that, and it's repurposing it all. So the future is bright for that. We've got a great selection of producers inside the platform. I'm working on bringing some more amazing artists on there. It's just trying to get the right deal for all parties, as obviously this shit don't come for free when you're getting big artists on board. So that's just a work in progress, and there is a big development happening with SYNTHO, but we're not going to talk about that today. But all I'm saying is we're going all in, so that's something to look out for in 2022. But yeah, there's not too much to delve into there. I think the whole thing has been very good, and I've realized that the most value I can add in that platform is showing you guys how I make my tunes. And we've got all the great producers with more tutorial-based stuff, referencing-based stuff. But it seems like the community really enjoy watching me make music and seeing what I do. So there'll be much more music from me getting made in there. Very raw stuff from me. And having more technical stuff from the likes of Brandon and guests on board. So all the members, big up, honestly. It's such a great community of people. If you want to join, there is a £10 trial. We're not going to make this a big sales thing, but or you can do a month membership, or you can do a £10 membership for a week. Honestly, if you want to meet like-minded producers, you want to learn how to make bangers, there is nowhere better to go. It's not even a debate, really. There's that much stuff on there now. It's an unrivaled platform, to say the least. So yeah, moving on from SYNTHO, we're going to talk about the DJing stuff. I've got to admit, I've said this before on the podcast, I completely lost the hunger for DJing at one point. Completely. I think the whole pandemic, lack of seeing people, DJing is about connection. It's about atmosphere, energy. There's just something about being with the people when you're playing records. It's so special that really makes it super addictive. I love playing records at home, don't get me wrong, but it's nowhere near as addictive as that adrenaline, being with people. And I've got to say, I did kind of lose the itch for it. And it got to the point where I was like, I probably could go without DJing again. I think at the podcast we said this. And yeah, it was quite mad, really, that feeling arose, because without the DJing, I would not be talking on this microphone now, because the audience I've grown is based off my music and DJing productions, all that jazz. So the DJing very much came out of nowhere in terms of how much the fire reignited in my belly. I played a gig in Maidstone the week before it was socially distanced, and I played a gig, and it did not go well for me on the terms of when I was selecting my tracks. I need to put my bass somewhere, but I'm very cautious of putting them next to any of this hardware. It was one of those gigs where when I was selecting tracks, nothing was like going how I expected, as in not the way the crowd were, it was just the way it felt when I was DJing. It was the first time I'd played in a while. I'd played another social distance gig, but they're just completely different. Anyway, I came away from that gig, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because it was miles away, and I got home, I was on the train back, and I was thinking I wasn't prepared enough there. But I couldn't have been any more prepared for the circumstances. It was still social distance, so it was still a lot of like, well, social distance gig. When you look back now, it's actually crazy to think these existed. I was on the train home, and I thought, if I'm gonna do this, I can't be messing around. I'm doing it properly. How you do something is how you do everything. And by this, I just mean I'm not just gonna turn up to a gig with a load of records, a USB, get fucking smashed, play a few tunes, and then be like, right, that's me done. Obviously play a good set, but not really go with intention. That's not how I'm doing it. That is not how I am doing it. So I left that gig very clear on what was next. And what was next was some almost like refinding which records I want to play, being organised, and being purposeful with what I was going to do next. So the following weekend was the You&Me Progress Center gig, and you may have seen videos. I think it was probably the greatest. I'm not the greatest. Sounds very dramatic. It was a very, very good gig. It wasn't the best gig since like the restrictions lifted. However, to me, it felt amazing because I went away and really collected my thoughts as a DJ. I planned the set too much, maybe, but I really was. I packed the bag. I've done the video on YouTube. If you go down a few, maybe it can pop up on the screen here. How to prepare for your first gig back, and I really, really prepared. I prepared very much so for it, and it went great. It went how I envisioned it. The crowd loved it. The crowd was amazing. It was the first one back. Goes without saying that we all had a very, very nice party, and yeah, it was one that stays in memory as it was something special about it. I think everyone was like out again. No one talked about the you-know-what. Everyone was just there for a good time, and it was very, very good. And that really then allowed me to kick on from that gig because I got it so right. If I'd had that gig and it had gone wrong, I think it would have been a nightmare because I would have then been second guessing every other gig because the first one was social distance that didn't go well. I could very much still, I had a mindset of like, right, we can get it right for the proper one. But that was a big gig. And if I hadn't got that right, I think it would have very much, it would have damaged, not damaged, it's a very strong word again, but it wouldn't have been good for my profile. It wouldn't have been good for the party. I had a lot riding on my shoulders because it's my party. And obviously the party I run with 3 other people. And like, if I don't perform, then it's not good. But that's why I prepare. And that preparation really, I figured a lot out in that week because I knew I had to nail the preparation. And then because I really figured out what worked well in that preparation, I've now kind of gone for that formula. And I did this today for the New Year's Day gig. So if you listen to this in real time, it is the 28th. In 4 days, I'm playing again. And yeah, we really nailed the preparation today. And I'm super confident. I'm just going through every record in the bag so I know what's in there. It's all in a very nice order in terms of it kind of flows through. We've got the after party stuff at the back. And it makes you all more confident because I know when I get to the gig that everything's in place. I know what's in the bag. I'm not turning up. Because what can happen is, I think if you're not careful and you keep buying new records like I do all the time, you can keep chucking them in your bag, and before you know it, you've got a bag that's messy. There's loads of new records and you don't really know that well. You've actually not got that much of a structured set. You've kind of just got loads of random records. And I think you'll notice that so many DJs that I've noticed, especially since they come back, they're all playing the same records since they did before COVID. And I think a lot of people stick to the records they know really well, that work well, and just slowly build around it. I think I can be guilty of buying too many records sometimes, then not giving the good records enough time to really leave their mark on the dance floor. So that's something to bear in mind, I think, for 2022, to not be so hasty to remove bangers from my record bag. Although Slamming will not be getting played again, as you guys have heard it enough times, so don't keep asking me at the gigs, because people are asking me. I'm like, I can't play this again. I played it like every gig for the first 3 months, and it got videoed every time. That's the problem. The problem is not playing the record every gig, it's getting the videos every gig. Then everyone keeps sharing them, then it looks like you play the same tunes. That's another reason as well, actually, that the DJs that don't post as many videos, because I post a lot of videos because it's part of like what I enjoy doing. Yeah, and you can't play the tunes as much because the video's been on social media and everyone's heard it then. It's not a surprise anymore. So that's one thing to think about. It's actually quite mad when you think about it. But yeah, posting videos of bombs actually makes the shelf life of the bomb shorter. So next, DJing is anything else to talk about? Well, we played in Portugal. We played in, was it only one international gig? Venice, which was super. 2 other gigs didn't quite materialise. A lot of UK gigs, I played a lot this year, more than I thought I would, which has been super. Next year is looking busy already. Some of the gigs that are coming in are what I could only dream of, a lot of UK ones, actually, like really good UK ones. People are doing some good shit next year in the UK. Big up all of you if you're listening. South America is on the cards, hopefully. I would hope Australia would be. And who knows, USA maybe? USA maybe. Let's hope. I think next year is going to be good for gigs. And like I say, the DJing fire is back in the belly. It's funny, as we're talking about all this next year, I'm looking at this list of things that I'd want to speak about. I'm like, how the fuck is this all going to fit in next year? And this is why it's important to grow a team and hopefully have someone I can rely on to keep everything tight, no matter where I am in the world. So the DJing, yeah, I'm really enjoying it again. I feel like I am maturing as a DJ as well, in terms of the fact that I'm turning up to gigs in a much better state. I'm more chilled. I'm still a bit of a lunatic sometimes, but I'm 26 now. I feel like I'm 26. I think that COVID's made me grow up a lot, maybe having more responsibility, having the various businesses, but I do actually feel like an adult now, which is sad. And I'll tell you what, I have done a few, like 3 weeks where I've gone out and had a few weekends off because I'm not at a gig, but that's maturity if I've ever seen it. And a lot of my very good mates still getting after every weekend. So I've got to say that I actually wish sometimes that I still had that fire in my belly to go and send it every weekend, but honestly, I really don't, which is good, but also you can't beat a good old turbo. So I'm not really here nor there whether I'm happy actually that I've kind of quieted down a bit. I'm definitely still, I've got a wild side, but I try and tame it as much as possible. And I like to say, if it's a good gig, I think it warrants a party. But going on stupid, daft, going for one pint and getting in at 7 a.m, it's not good for productivity, guys. So that's going to get left behind in 2021. Even though it didn't happen too many times, it still happened more than I would like to have happened. But in terms of gigs, I was very sensible at the majority of gigs. There was a few naughty ones, but all in all, good shit. Oh, and Fabric. I played Fabric. That was a fucking good one. That was a very big achievement for myself, and I was very proud of myself. And thank you for Leon for the opportunity and the guys at Fabric. And I think I will be back. I hope everything is crossed, as it was a very, very good experience. And that's got to be one of the best clubs in the world, if not the best. It was super sick. And I know it's been voted the best before, so it's nothing new that I'm saying, but it is very, very special. So production, let's talk about that. Production, what have I released this year? I've released on Locus, which I made last year. I've released an automatic writing, which I made at the end of 2020, but I made a few of them in January this year. I've released on Truly Madly's label. Have I done anything on You&Me this year? For You&Me 04, which I made last year. I made them ages ago. Any remixes? I don't think I've done any remixes this year. I'm going to do a few more remixes next year. Remixes are hard work, though, especially when you've got all these things to worry about. Then having a deadline for a remix just seems so unnecessary for the return. So remixes have to be special. Has to be a good offer on the table, unfortunately, because having the deadline of finishing a track is worse than having a podcast scheduled on a hangover. I'm telling you. So the production, I think I didn't make as much music as I'd have liked. Not at all. But the ones I did make were good. So the ones I've made this year, I've made Energy, which you may have seen in a lot of videos. I made the Hip House Anthem, which probably will get released on Bandcamp soon. Maybe now. Maybe I'll do it now. Who knows? If there's a link attached to the video, it's out now. I didn't collaborate enough at all. I released the collaboration with Luca Gazelle on Richie Ahmed's Back to Black label, the Organ Nuke tune. That was good. That got some good support as well. What else? I made some music, but not enough. It was a weird year. I didn't have much inspiration for tunes before the old gigs didn't start. So before the gigs started, sorry. Then once they started, I think it was the time thing, because then I was trying to get used to gigging and synthoing again. Then I was trying to do like way too many things in the festival, things like that, which we're going to talk about after. There was always something next. And one thing I've got to realise, I guess, is there's always going to be something next. This is a lesson for life, that nothing ever seems to really change. Like, you get one thing out the way, then the next thing's in the way. So, yeah. And I can't really start thinking like, oh, well, after Christmas I'm going to have time, after New Year I'm going to have time, because I need to make time. You need to make time for the things you want to do, because if you just wait and wait, the time never ever seems to come. So what do I want to do next year in terms of music? I need to be intentional with my studio sessions. I need to say to myself when I'm going to make music, and then that remains. I get too distracted. Someone will text me something to do with something work related, but then I'll end up doing that. And it's like, what's going to add more value? Making a slammer or replying to this non-urgent email about, I don't know, getting prices for something, or like I've got to do some kind of artwork or write something. That could be done later. I don't do artwork, by the way. I don't like if that was an example. Cheers, guys. So yeah, I think the whole thing here is I need to make music in dedicated time and not allow for distractions. Distractions are the devil. So I think I'm going to try and do at least 3 mornings a week. And then I think that's enough time for me. And when I say mornings, I mean like 9 till 1, 10 till 1, 3 times a week. That's 9 hours a week. That would be enough for me to really to get a good amount of tunage out if it's focused. And then I think if I dedicate that much time to it, what I'll find is then I'll be inspired to make more music, if that makes sense. So there's no point me saying I'm going to do 3 full days a week next year making tunes, because it's not going to happen for one. And if there's days I can't be arsed, I'm just going to fuck it off. Whereas if I know I've only penciled in 3-4 hours, whatever, I'll grind it out. If nothing comes of it, we leave it. We go and do other shit. This is a completely ballpark figure, by the way, that number. I don't know why I said 3 hours, 3 days a week, but it seems like a reasonable amount. Why not? But yeah, I'm not going to put too much expectation on it. Quality over quantity, but I need to keep churning the EPs out. I need to try and release on some new labels next year. I'm not sure which ones, but I'm very certain that my sound is going to be a bit darker next year, a bit harder, a bit more serious. Serious anyway, but I think we're going to keep going more serious. The organ's getting left in 2021. Actually, I lied. There's a few organs still on the next You&Me EP, but the organ's getting left this year, man. All of you guys, the M1 needs to be left. Well, the M1 organ anyway. I think it's done now. I think it's completely done. I'm sick of it, hearing it. It makes me cringe a bit now inside. They are good party tunes in the club, but it's been killed. I'm sorry, it's been killed. So yeah, I've got my new setup now. As you can see, if you're watching on YouTube, I've got my RM1X, my S2400 outside. So it's a full new workflow. It took me a while to adjust to the workflow, which is part of the reason it makes as many tunes. But since I've adjusted, I've stopped making tunes again, actually. But I've enjoyed it more, and it definitely aligns more with the sound I'm after. So we will definitely be putting the tools to good use some more next year. And yeah, I can't give an example, but I just want to make more timeless music. I always come back to this, but in reality, like, the M1 is not timeless music, man. It's a trend at the moment, and I've never been one really to get dragged into trends. I released that Sucking for EP 2 years ago now, or is it about 18 months? And that's M1 fueled, but this was kind of before this massive hype of it, and now it's just getting ridiculous. It's getting very ridiculous and very unoriginal, and it's just not for me anymore. Not for me, as Gemma Collins would say. So yeah, we're going to go harder, darker, more delays, more stabs, more well thought out elements, but that's for next year. My sets are going in the right direction, but then it's trying to make music now a bit more serious to go with it. And you do run that risk, though, I guess, of you don't want to become too underground, which I don't want to do. It's not what I'm trying to do here. I just want to make more music that I really resonate with more, and I'm really proud of. So yeah, that's what the tune's going to look like next year. And as you can tell, I've got a bit of a sore throat, and it's actually starting to hurt a bit, all this talking. So we're 39 minutes in on my recording, and my throat is hurting. So this is probably the post-COVID sore throat, and we're already on the waters. So yeah, production, I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed making music. I've made enough music. If I'd made more music, would I be in a better place? Maybe. And this is always the question to come back to on these things, is like, doing more of this at a higher quality, would this get me closer to where I want to be? And if the answer is yes, then do it. If the answer is no, then don't worry too much. Like, in reality, if I'd done the podcast all year, would I be in a better place now? I probably would be in a much better place now, in terms of, I don't mean mentally, I mean, I'd have probably a bigger following, a bigger audience. Who knows what it could have led to in terms of, you never know with this podcast stuff. I think it gives you I think a podcast opens up a whole new stratosphere in terms of being interviewed by people, interviewing people. And I think even the whole TV thing, I don't want to be on TV, guys, but I think getting good at talking with no verbal tics and being clear and precise with what you say can definitely open up the possibility for TV kind of things. So who knows? Maybe a Netflix documentary one day. I'm kind of aware of the fact that being able to speak on camera well is a good skill to have. So let's keep working on that. But yeah, I think the production, if I'd done a bit more, I would like to have had more releases lined up for next year. I've only got 2 EPs at the moment. I've not got that many demos. I've got a few, but I'm not that keen on them now. They've kind of gone off them a bit. I've got 2 remixes confirmed. But we're going to get our foot on the pedal in January. I'm just going to try and keep 1 day a week at least where I make something good. I think the 3 hours 3 times a week is good, but that means I've got 3 mornings then gone, and I've got other things. Morning is my time, so if it's going to work, I'm not too sure. So I won't keep you for too much longer, guys. We're going to go to You&Me, my event/party with my great friends Kurt, Dan and Dash. We started You&Me over 6 years ago now, and this has been our year. There's no doubt about it. It's really crazy because before the pandemic, we were just a Manchester party. I guess it kind of has grown in line with what's happened with my profile. But people are now coming from all over the place, as far as Europe and Romania, things like that, Italy, coming to our parties, and it's changed the game for us because now we know we can really book artists that we want to see, that we know educate people, and they'll have a great experience. So it's given us more confidence in putting shows on. Tickets have been selling like hotcakes. We've sold probably more tickets this year than we did in 6 years prior. And yeah, it's just been an absolute blast. I've played some amazing shows there. It's always got our core crowd there. And I think they'll all agree with me that it's been a year that's exceeded our expectations. Well, everything has, to be fair, and You&Me has been a part of that as well. So we have New Year's Day in a few days, which is me, Lorena and Cecilio, Luca, Local Dub, and the Big Gents. That's going to be a good one. I've got a great set prepared. I think all the other guys will be on fire as well. So we'll be starting next year in style. I feel like that's going to be the closing of this year, though, if that makes sense. Almost closing that chapter. And then we're back in February then with a very cool lineup, which will be announced after New Year's Day, I'm sure. And then the label, we put out 1 EP, which isn't enough. Well, no, we put 2 out. 1 from me, 1 for Local Dub, which is good. Both EPs are nice. They've sold okay. And you guys have all been playing them. My one's been played by like Preku, Christy Cons, Mahaya Daniel. There's such a variety of people played it. Casey Spillman, Chris Dussey, Archie, which is good. And Locals is a really, really good EP. It only just came out, so still waiting for some more videos from that one, but it seems to be being appreciated by the people, which is really good. So the label is going to be a bit more frequent next year, from EPs from me, Charlie, as AK Jensen. We're going to do a VA. I reckon there'll be another Local Dub out. I would have thought me and Local Double get an EP out at some point. We've made one track together so far, which is really cool. But yeah, You&Me is going to be fucking good next year. But just carrying on. Keep going. 6 years. Next year will be 7, which is a fucking long time, man. So if you guys are thinking about starting an event or anything like that, start now. It takes a while to get where you want to be. Trust me, it took us over. It wasn't until this 6th year that it's turned out good. As in like it really, you know, it's going to work. Before this, there was no certainty that it was ever really going to work out in terms of the third person perspective. I always knew it was going to be good and it would always work out in my heart. I knew it would, but like you weren't sure before the pandemic, and now it's really getting to levels I could have only dreamt of. So long may it continue. Long may it continue. My voice is slowly deteriorating as I go. And last but not least, I want to talk about Hide&Seek. So we launched the festival in 2019. 2020, we did not make it. In 2021, we were back. And back we were. Thank you to everyone that came, because I know there was a massive crew of SYNTHO members, podcast listeners, YouTube watchers that came to the festival and made it an unforgettable experience. I've got a YouTube video on the setup and things like that. To be honest, I'm not even going to go into detail on the Hide&Seek thing because the video is the best thing to watch. It was such a good experience. Already buzzing for next year. And yeah, I think we've got something very special there as well. And there's a lot of work that goes into it. Big up all the other guys that I work with on it. And I know next year is going to be even spicier. The lineup's looking ridiculous. The ideas, the concepts, everything is going to be through the roof. So to be honest, we don't really need to speak about that. I think everyone knows that that was a guaranteed winner. So what can you expect to hear from me going forward? I'm hoping we'll get a podcast out the second week of January. I want to do a YouTube video 1 a week. And SYNTHO will continue on average of 2 a week. And yeah, as you can see, that already is a lot of fucking work. Let's forget anything else. So that's why I need to really, really figure out the optimal schedule to do things, because I don't want to be recording constantly. Batching is the way forward. So I'd almost like do 2 YouTube videos in one day, 2 podcasts in another day, or you can do 3 and 3, whatever. Because I could do YouTube bi-weekly, podcast bi-weekly, as in recording bi-weekly, but always double up, and you've always got enough content then. So that could be what I do. But yeah, the year of the content, I guess. The newsletter will be back, so if you want to subscribe to that, you can just hit the link on the website. I'll attach any links appropriate to this. I'm going to smash this podcast out, as in just upload it. Doesn't need editing or anything like that. I'm hot now. I'm getting hot. I'm getting flustered. I'm getting everything. If you want to sign up to any of my courses, links will be below. If you want to learn to make music, do the beginner's course. If you want to make bangers and you already know how to use Ableton, just dive straight into SYNTHO. If you've got any nice words to say, comment below. But apart from that, guys, thank you for listening to me for this long. Thank you for being part of the amazing audience and community, and I wish you all a happy new year. May the good vibes continue. God bless, peeps.